All right, get ready to dive deep today because we're tackling some pretty mind-bending stuff. Quantum consciousness and quantum psychology.
Ooh, fun.
You shared this book with us, Quantum Consciousness, The Guide to Experiencing Quantum Psychology by Stephen Wolinsky.
Yeah.
And it's a fascinating read, even though it was published way back in 1993. Walensky was already suggesting that psychology could be revolutionized by blending in Eastern philosophy with quantum physics.
Yeah, it was a pretty radical idea at the time.
Yeah.
But Wolinsky had this really unique background. He was a Gestalt and Reichian therapist, but he was also trained in Ericksonian hypnosis and NLP and Eastern meditation. So he was bringing all these different perspectives together in this one book.
That's what I think makes it so intriguing. It's not just theory. You actually get a glimpse into Walensky's own, personal journey. He starts with that classic question, who am I? And he dives into all sorts of practices, but it's through meditation that he finds the most profound answers, and those answers unexpectedly lead him to quantum physics.
Yeah, and that's where things start to get really interesting, how our inner world, our thoughts and emotions are somehow connected to this outer world of quantum mechanics.
Exactly. One of the big ideas he explores is the observer as creator, which comes from Heisenberg's uncertainty principle.
Right.
And it's this idea that by observing something, we actually influence reality.
Yeah,
What does that even mean for us, in our everyday lives?
it's a huge shift in thinking. Right? We're not just passive observers. We're active participants in shaping our reality.
Hmm.
And Orlinsky outlines 3 levels of consciousness to explain this voice. The first level is where most of us operate most of the time, caught up in our thoughts and emotions, kind of like we're on autopilot.
Okay.
The second level is where we can step back and become the observer. We witness our thoughts and emotions without judgment.
Okay, I think I get that it's like being able to press pause on your inner monologue and just notice what's going on.
Precisely. And then there's the third level, which is like the most radical one. And it suggests that the observer isn't just watching, they're actually creating their subjective reality. And Walensky believes this is where we tap into true freedom and creativity.
Whoa, hold on a second. Are you telling me I'm basically creating my own reality? But what about things I can't control, like getting sick or losing a job? It's not like I'm choosing those things, right?
That's a really important point, and Walensky acknowledges that there are external factors we can't control. He's focusing more on our inner world, our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs, and how those shaped our experience of reality.
Okay.
It's not about blaming ourselves for everything, but about recognizing the power we do have to influence how we perceive and react to the world around us.
That makes more sense. So it's more about mastering our inner universe rather than trying to control the outer one.
Exactly.
Right.
And in doing so, we might actually find that our outer world starts to reflect those inner shifts.
Okay, so we've got these 3 levels of consciousness, but how do we actually move between them? Does Walensky give us any practical tools for doing that?
He does, one of the key things he emphasizes is delabeling. It's about learning to see our experiences, our thoughts, emotions, sensations as just energy, without getting caught up in the labels and judgments we usually attach to them.
So instead of saying, I'm angry, I might just notice the heat in my chest or the tension in my shoulders without calling it anger.
Exactly.
Hmm.
By stripping away the label, you take away its power to define your experience. You create space for something new to emerge.
That's a pretty cool technique. I can see how that could be really helpful for dealing with strong emotions. It's like taking a step back and saying, okay, I'm noticing this sensation, but I don't have to get swept away by it.
That's the idea. And Walensky doesn't just stop there. He even suggests practicing delabeling with physical objects. Like imagine looking at a chair and seeing it as pure energy without the label chair.
I have to admit, that's kind of blowing my mind a little bit. I mean, I can see a chair. I know it's a chair, but to see it as just energy, that's a whole different way of looking at the world.
It is, and it can be really challenging at first, but by practicing this, we start to loosen the grip of our conceptual mind and open ourselves up to a whole new way of perceiving reality. Remember, in quantum physics, everything is ultimately energy.
This is reminding me of that famous double-slit experiment where the act of observing actually changes how particles behave.
Right.
It's like consciousness itself is playing a role in shaping reality.
Precisely. And Walensky is suggesting that this isn't just happening at the subatomic level, it's happening all the time in our everyday lives. Our consciousness is constantly interacting with and shaping the world around us.
So if I'm starting to get this, Walensky's approach is about moving from a victim mentality where we feel like things are just happening to us to a creator mentality where we recognize that we have a role to play in shaping our experience.
That's a great way to put it. It's about taking ownership of our inner world and recognizing the power we have to choose how we want to experience reality.
Okay, so we've got this idea of delabeling, and we've touched on the observer as creator concept. But I'm also curious about what Wolinsky says about emotions. He's not just talking about thoughts, right?
Right. He sees emotions as energy too, not just these abstract things we think about. And he actually gives some specific techniques for working with them.
Like what? Give us a taste of how he approaches emotions.
One of the things he emphasizes is shifting our focus from the story of the emotion, the why behind it, to the raw feeling itself. So instead of getting caught up in the reasons why you're feeling sad or angry, you simply observe the sensations of sadness or anger in your body without judgment.
It's like noticing the wave without getting caught up in the story of the storm that created it.
Exactly. And by doing that, by simply being present with the feeling, we can allow it to transform without getting swept away by the narrative we often attach to it.
I see how that could be really helpful. It's like taking the power away from the emotion by simply observing it.
That's the key. And it's something you can practice anytime, anywhere. It's about becoming more aware of your emotional landscape and learning to navigate it with skill and awareness.
All right, so we've got these powerful concepts of the observer as creator, delabeling, and this new way of experiencing emotions. It's a lot to take in before we move on. I'm curious what stands out to you as the most mind-blowing idea so far.
What's really fascinating to me is how Wolinsky connects all these different threads. Eastern philosophy, Western psychology, and quantum physics. It's like he's weaving a tapestry of understanding that bridges the gap between the inner world and the outer world.
I agree. It's not just a book about psychology. It's a book about the nature of reality itself, and it challenges us to question our assumptions about who we are and what's possible.
Definitely, it's a call to awaken to a deeper level of awareness and to step into our power as conscious creators.
Okay, so we've laid some groundwork here, but there's so much more to explore. We haven't even touched on his ideas about time and space. And you mentioned earlier that he provides tons of practical exercises throughout the book.
Exactly. We've just scratched the surface of what quantum consciousness has to offer.
We're about to take the plunge into some even deeper waters as we explore how Wolinsky reimagines time and space through a quantum lens.
Absolutely.
All right, listeners, you heard it here first. We're just getting warmed up. Make sure to join us for part 2, where we'll dive even deeper into the mysteries of quantum consciousness with Wolinsky as our guide.
I can't wait. So welcome back. Last time we were talking about how Wolinsky kind of blends Eastern philosophy and Western psychology and quantum physics in his book. And it's really challenging us to see ourselves not just as these passive observers, but as active creators of our own reality.
Yeah, it's a pretty wild concept when you think about it. You know, we're so used to thinking of ourselves as separate from the world around us, but Wolinsky is saying that we're actually deeply interconnected with it.
He is. And to understand this better, he takes us even deeper into the quantum realm by exploring how our perceptions of time and space might not be as fixed as we think they are. He draws a lot from physicist David Bohm, who proposed this idea of an implicate order.
Okay, remind me again, what is the implicate order? It sounds a little intimidating.
Basically, it's like a deeper level of reality where everything is interconnected and exists as pure potential. You can kind of think of it like a cosmic blueprint that contains all the possibilities, past, present, and future. What we experience is like the explicate order. You know, the everyday world of separate objects and linear time is just a projection from this deeper level.
So it's like that old analogy of a movie projector, right? The film reel contains the entire movie, but we only see one frame at a time on the screen.
Exactly. And just like every frame of the movie is already there on the reel, Bohm is suggesting that everything that ever was, is, and will be is already present in this implicate order.
Wow. Okay, so you're telling me that the past, present, and future are all happening at the same time in this deeper level of reality?
That's the basic idea.
Yeah.
It's definitely mind-bending. But Wolinsky argues that it has really profound implications for how we understand ourselves in the universe.
Yeah. I'm starting to see how this connects to the idea of the observer as creator. If everything is interconnected and all possibilities exist simultaneously, then maybe our choices, our intentions are somehow influencing which possibilities become our reality.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's suggesting. Is like our consciousness is acting as a filter, collapsing the wave function of infinite possibilities into the specific reality we experience.
I'm thinking about those moments, you know, when you run into someone you were just thinking about, or a song comes on the radio that perfectly reflects your current mood. Like, are those examples of the implicate order at work?
That's one way to think about it. Wolinsky would say that those synchronicities are like glimpses of the interconnectedness of everything. There are these hints that there's more to reality than meets the eye.
So how do we access this implicate order? Is it something we can experience directly?
Wolinsky believes we can get closer to it through practices like meditation and mindfulness. By quieting the mind and becoming more present, we can start to perceive reality in a less fragmented way and in a more holistic way.
It's like we're tuning into a different frequency, one that allows us to perceive the underlying unity of everything.
Exactly, and he provides some really interesting exercises in the book to help you experience this directly. One is called Quantum Exercise 29, and it involves looking into a mirror.
Okay, looking in a mirror, what's so quantum about that?
He asks you to kind of notice that while the person looking back at you has changed over time, the you that's observing has remained the same. It's a way of connecting with that timeless aspect of yourself, the observer, that exists beyond the flow of time.
That's a really cool exercise. I'm gonna have to try that one later. It's like a mini meditation on the nature of time and consciousness.
And he has other exercises for exploring the concept of space, like one where you visualize your thoughts and feelings as kind of floating in this spacious awareness. The idea is to notice that your thoughts and feelings appear and disappear within this space, but the space itself remains unchanged.
So it's about becoming aware of the container, the space of consciousness, rather than getting lost in the contents of our minds.
Exactly. It's like stepping back from the screen of your mind and becoming aware of the room in which the movie is being projected. And this brings us to one of the most intriguing concepts in the book, the living void.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What is the living void and why is it so important?
Wolinsky describes the living void as that fundamental ground of being from which everything arises. Think of it as the emptiness out of which particles are born and into which they eventually dissolve. It's that silent space of pure potential that exists before any thought or emotion or perception.
It sounds a lot like what Buddhists call shunyata, or emptiness. Is that a connection that Wolinsky makes?
Definitely, he sees a lot of parallels between Eastern mystical traditions and modern physics, and it's also similar to the concept of the quantum vacuum in physics, that state of pure potentiality from which all matter and energy emerge.
So it's like the ultimate source, the wellspring of all creation.
That's one way to think about it, and Wolinsky suggests that we can access this living void through practices like meditation and mindfulness. He even offers this exercise called Einstein's riddle, which helps us understand how the living void can actually resolve conflict.
Yeah, you mentioned that exercise earlier where we visualize a conflict as these two shapes floating in space, and what happens when we merge with those shapes in the space around them.
He says that as we merge with the space, the conflict often starts to dissolve, because we're realizing that both sides of the conflict are ultimately part of the same underlying reality, the same living void.
So it's like that saying, the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. Both love and hate are states of being, but the void is beyond both.
Exactly. And he applies this principle not just to conflict, but to all forms of suffering. He suggests that much of our suffering comes from clinging to our limited sense of self and resisting the flow of experience. But if we can learn to rest in the living void, we can find a deep sense of peace and liberation.
It sounds incredibly liberating to be able to let go of the struggle and just be present in the vastness of this living void. It's like surrendering to something much bigger than ourselves.
That's a great way to put it, and Wolinsky provides several techniques for cultivating this state of being.
Hmm.
He even talks about how we can use this understanding to work with difficult memories and emotions. He suggests that by visualizing a painful memory as being held in the spaciousness of the living void, we can diffuse its charge and release its grip on us.
So it's not about erasing the memory or pretending it didn't happen. It's about changing our relationship to it. It's like we're learning to hold our pain with more compassion and understanding.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that the memory itself is just a collection of energy and information, and that we have the power to choose how we experience that energy and information. We can choose to let it define us, or we can choose to let it go.
This is really resonating with me. It's like we're being invited to step into a more spacious way of being, one where we're not so defined by our past experiences.
That's the beauty of Wolinsky's approach.
Yeah.
He's showing us that we're not limited by the stories we tell ourselves. We have the power to rewrite those stories and create new possibilities for ourselves.
Okay, so we've explored this living void concept and how it relates to our experience of time and space. But I'm curious, how practical is all of this? Can we really apply these ideas to our everyday lives?
Absolutely. Wolinsky doesn't just leave us with these abstract concepts. He provides tons of practical exercises and techniques to help us integrate these principles into our daily lives. He covers everything from managing stress and anxiety to improving relationships to tapping into your creative potential.
So he's giving us a whole toolkit for personal transformation.
Exactly. He's empowering us to become alchemists of our own consciousness, to transform our suffering into wisdom, and to create a life that's aligned with our deepest truth.
All right, listeners, we've covered a lot of ground in this part of the deep dive. We've explored the implicate order, the living void, and how these concepts can help us navigate the challenges of human experience. But there's still so much more to uncover.
Definitely, there's a whole universe of wisdom waiting to be discovered in quantum consciousness.
That's right. So make sure to join us for part 3, where we'll continue our exploration and uncover even more practical tools and insights. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into quantum consciousness. It's amazing to think about how Walensky was writing about these ideas way back in the 90s, and they're even more relevant today, especially in a world where it feels like everything's changing so fast.
Yeah, it's true. His work offers a really valuable framework for understanding ourselves and the world around us in a time when things can feel pretty chaotic.
Yeah, absolutely. So far, we've explored how he weaves together Eastern philosophy and Western psychology and quantum physics to present this idea of the observer as creator. We've also gotten a glimpse into these kind of mind-bending concepts of the implicate order and the living void.
Right, and in this last part, I want to highlight how Wolinski doesn't just leave us with theory. He actually gives us practical tools to work with these concepts in our everyday lives. He has this whole range of exercises that are designed to help us shift our perspective and become more conscious creators of our reality.
I'm really interested in those exercises. Can you give us an example of one that really stood out to you?
One that I found particularly powerful is called Quantum Exercise 27, Healing Trauma. And, trauma can be one of the most challenging things to work with because it often feels so deeply ingrained in our bodies and minds.
Yeah, absolutely. It can feel like those past experiences are still controlling us in the present.
Exactly. So in this exercise, Wolinski guides us to visualize a traumatic memory as a collection of energy and information. And then he has us imagine that energy and information being held within the spaciousness of the living void.
It's like we're creating a safe container for that painful experience rather than trying to push it away or deny it.
That's the key. It's not about erasing the memory, but about transforming our relationship to it. By holding it in the vastness of the living void, we can start to diffuse its charge and release its grip on us.
That sounds like a really powerful way to approach healing. It's not about pretending the trauma didn't happen, but about integrating it into our experience in a way that doesn't control us anymore.
Exactly. And he provides a lot of other exercises for working with a wide range of challenges, from anxiety and stress to relationship issues and creative blocks.
It sounds like he's giving us a whole toolkit for navigating the ups and downs of human experience.
He is, and he emphasizes that these aren't just one-time exercises. They're practices that we can incorporate into our daily lives to help us become more conscious and empowered.
You know what I really appreciate about Walensky's approach is that he doesn't shy away from the responsibility that comes with this observer as creator concept. He's not just saying, like, think positive thoughts and everything will be great.
Right, he acknowledges that it's not always easy to shift our perspective, and that
Yeah.
sometimes we need to work through some pretty challenging stuff. But he also reminds us that we have a choice in how we respond to those challenges.
And that choice, that ability to respond rather than react, is where true freedom lies.
Absolutely. And it's not just about our own individual freedom. He suggests that as we become more conscious creators, we also start to influence the world around us in a positive way.
It's like that ripple effect, right? Our inner transformation can create positive change in our relationships, our communities, even the world at large.
Exactly. So it's not just about personal growth. It's about creating a more conscious and compassionate world for
Yeah.
everyone.
I think that's a beautiful message to end on. It's a reminder that we're all interconnected and that our choices really do matter. So, as we wrap up our deep dive into quantum consciousness, I want to encourage you to keep exploring these ideas, keep practicing these exercises, and see how they can transform your life and maybe even the world around you. If you're looking for a deeper understanding of yourself and the nature of reality, this book is definitely worth checking out.
It definitely is.
All right, listeners, thanks for joining us on this incredible journey into the mysteries of quantum consciousness. We'll see you next time for another deep dive.